The data I'm going to uncover for you today is going to show you that Donald Trump has rug pulled the chance at a United States Bitcoin strategic reserve. Is this because Donald Trump is the first president to create a Bitcoin ETF? I'm going to dive into all of this and more, and why Donald Trump's ETF is potentially an attack on BlackRock. But first, let's dive straight into the data. As we've seen, Polymarket, one of the more trusted data websites, show that the chance for a Bitcoin strategic reserve in the first 100 days has absolutely plummeted. If you look at the numbers here, folks, it peaked nearly at 37% chance here earlier this year, directly before his campaign started, or not his campaign, his presidency. But even here, if we're looking at will the United States Bitcoin National Reserve start in 2025, we're seeing it go from a 65% chance to under 40. So at one point, it was more likely than not. But now it seems like it's less likely than not. In fact, the opposite. We've had a 25% swing, quick math for you. But I think it is very interesting here where we're seeing a lot of the states decide to take this into their own hands. There's 20 state-level Bitcoin reserves. If enacted, this could drive 23 billion in buying, or nearly 250k Bitcoin. The sum of an independent pension fund allocation would likely rise if legislation moves forward. So here's all of these 20 states. Now, there's a lot of nuances to this tweet here from my man, friend of the program, Matthew Siegel. But if you look at this a little bit further, and you see a few different articles here, one of which from a few days ago, that 16 states are betting on that strategic reserve. So instead of using this 20 number from Matthew Siegel, I decided to use 16. Be a little bit more on the conservative side of things, opposed to really going all out with this analyzation. But let's go into the quick maths here, folks. As my buddy Luke Mikic, who's going to hear probably rudely come and interrupt this live stream. But let's dive into the quick maths here. Oh, thank you. Coffee from the boys. Look at that. You can't get this kind of service anywhere else, folks. But as we dive in here to the GDP of these 16 states that are betting on the strategic reserve, that's according to Yahoo Finance, folks. That's not this short guy over here yelling hot air into the microphone. That's Yahoo Finance. So if you really take a dive into what is going on here, and you look at the quick maths according to ChatGPT, the trusted source, I guess. I mean, we shall see a little bit further. But if you look at all of these 16 states named in this Yahoo Finance article, that GDP is 9.1 trillion just of the combination of those 16. Now, where does that rank globally? It's twice the size of Japan, folks. That would be the third largest country according to GDP in the world. So these 16 states combined are bigger than every other country in the world except for the entire 50 United States and China. So it's not to be understated here that the states taking this into their own hands is very, very crucial here going forward, because the combination of all of them coming forward would be absolutely massive here, absolutely massive in the next couple of years. Now, is the United States going to be the United States of Bitcoin? Will Trump, back in the White House, list the states considering? I mean, look at all this, right? Everybody has been talking about Donald Trump and his potential plans for a, quote, Bitcoin stockpile. But everybody is asking, what's the difference between the stockpile? How are they going to go about it? Is it going to be a strategic reserve, a stockpile, or even better yet, there's now rumblings of the, Bitcoin, or of the sovereign wealth fund that Donald Trump is going to roll out. So there's a lot of questions on how this strategic reserve is going to look, how the U.S. is going to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet here. It seems like it is really going to be an interesting way that they're going to line all this out. And as I bet you did the intro here, folks, we've got another little wrinkle here. Not just the Trump meme coin that we had blasting everywhere just before his campaign. We've got his social media company launching a Bitcoin ETF. So, what does that mean for everything going forward? With the sovereign wealth fund, you can hold Bitcoin, you can hold tech stocks, you can hold ETFs as well. So, because Donald Trump is now inching towards a sovereign wealth fund opposed to maybe the strategic reserve, is he going to do this to basically shoo away the globalists, make sure that his ETF is the one that the sovereign wealth fund is holding? He doesn't want maybe the likes of Larry Fink to be controlling all this. He wants his guys to be controlling it. He doesn't want, Larry Fink, who's said openly that BlackRock will force change as needed. That's included things like DE&I, which he's scrapped from the beginning, and potentially some other fluff that BlackRock could force. Now, Donald Trump is looking at all this and saying, hey, I can create this Bitcoin ETF. You saw when I created this Trump meme coin, how much it skyrocketed in a single day. That's how much influence Donald Trump has. I'm not saying it was a good move or anything, folks, but what I am saying is that the creation of a sovereign wealth fund could look like Trump buying TikTok, buying these tech stocks, and taking it a step further. And all these states are maybe not necessarily looking at a strategic reserve because they're banking on the national strategic reserve to come through. They're looking at it as saying, hey, Donald Trump is basically telling us here that the strategic reserve is not something that is going to be potentially a priority because it's going to have to go through so many different steps. Now, I'm not a political expert by any means, folks. I do know that there's going to be a lot of red tape that the politicians are going to have to keep going through in order to continue and in order to build a strategic reserve. So the workaround of this would be, potentially building a sovereign wealth fund. But that doesn't stop other countries and other nation states from paying attention to what has been going on here in the US, right? There's been 21 other countries considering building a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Ever since Trump got elected in November, there's been 21 come along, right? Now, if you look, El Salvador, of course, always leading around amongst the Bitcoin strategic reserve. Allegedly, the United States of the law or policy enacted is in the works here, but it doesn't seem likely that it'll happen this year, at least according to Polymarket, folks. If you're a betting man, which maybe I will, maybe I dabble a little bit, I don't know if I'd necessarily be betting on it because we've seen the odds just drastically fall. What does Polymarket know? Well, I think that they're seeing all these signs here where they're seeing Trump create his own Bitcoin ETF. They're seeing a lot of loops and bounds having to be jumped through in order for this to be passed here in the future. And not only that, they're seeing Trump create his own ETF. So El Salvador leading the race makes sense. They've got Bukele in there. They made Bitcoin legal tender. They backed off making Bitcoin a legal tender here recently to get a loan from the IMF. But what did they do with that loan from the IMF? I also think that's a little curious. I did a video on that previously, where now instead of buying 1 Bitcoin a day, they've been buying 11. But, that's for another time here. But either way, creating this strategic reserve, I think, is very interesting because it seems like Trump is kind of backing away from the strategic reserve as he's realizing it's going to be more difficult. There's going to be more red tape. So he's going to create the first ever U.S. sovereign wealth fund. Now, with that sovereign wealth fund, will it include Bitcoin? I guess we'd have to buy the article in order to actually get that on there. But to me, I think it's essentially almost a no-brainer. I don't know if the odds here are the odds are on Polymarket because that sovereign wealth fund has not been created, but we do know the odds on Polymarket for the National Bitcoin Strategic Reserve have plummeted down to 40% from the peak of 65%. So as we were all touting, puffing our chest out here just a month ago, we're seeing those odds drastically change here, folks. We're seeing them come down dramatically. And that could be in part because we're seeing this Bitcoin price really just crab walk along here. We're having somewhat of a boring start to February. Nothing too exciting here. We have Bitcoin floating at 96,000. But if you really zoom out, folks, I think this is the beauty of Bitcoin is too many people just focus on the short-term price movements. They're looking for those giant gains that they get into one day, 1 week, whatever. But in reality, we see a lot of this crab walking here, right? In the past month, we have about a 2% gain. 6 months, we've averaged about 10% a month, right? So, and that's all coming from this month of November. We get 1 month, and if you're not DCAing in or getting in at a certain time and you're trying to time the market, you're going to have a tough time because if you miss that 1 month, it's going to make it difficult for you here, folks. But this is why I've partnered with my friends over at the Bitcoin Well, where I think is the best place to buy Bitcoin because they force you to hold it in self-custody. That is the true power of Bitcoin. I'm talking about ETFs, the strategic reserve, all this crazy baloney here, but you can hold your own Bitcoin and you could do it and set up a direct deposit if you're in the United States. You get all of your paycheck into the Bitcoin Well. You could have 20, 30, 10, however many percentage you want straight into Bitcoin and straight into cold storage. So the Bitcoin Wells makes it the easiest way for you to do that. And that's why I encourage everybody to sign up. Go to the bitcoinwell.com/green candle. You click sign up here with your email. You can have some points to the wishing well where you have a chance to win 1 million sats. That's going to be generational wealth in the future here, folks. 1 million sats. They're handing it to you. They're giving you the chance to win that. So go ahead and sign up there today. And if you're looking at this 97K rate and you're thinking, hey, this looks juicy, go to this OTC here, go to Bitcoin Well Infinite, join my friends there. They'll walk you through it. Make sure that everything is fine and dandy when you are setting up your Bitcoin buys. But let's get back to this tweet from my man, Matthew Siegel, friend of the program, as I like to say. He's been on the show a time or two. But look at all these numbers here, right, folks? They're saying the potential investments that they're already starting to talk about by state here, right? So we're looking at 10%, multiple 10% here, but anywhere from 1 to 10%, 1, 5, 3, 10. But with all that, that's looking at a total of $24 billion, nearly 250,000 Bitcoin at the current price. I think that's the other thing, folks. We're all looking at this at the current price. But with this, we're seeing, as the guys in the chat, Nick Richards is saying here, we're seeing a lot of political games being thrown around. Who could be the first one to do it? What state is it going to be? A lot of states don't want to be the first, to be honest, because if they see this, they do it. Although it could be hot in the streets right now, they see this and then they're like, hey, let me back off a little bit, because if it fails, that's why I think El Salvador was very important. If it fails, they're going to let somebody else take the fall and be like pointing at them, hey, even though it might have been their idea or something that they wanted to do, they didn't do it because they weren't first, right? And as my man in the chat down under Blues is saying, I'm just concerned with building my own Bitcoin reserve. Keep adding sats. That's what I love to hear, folks, because, yeah, I mean, like I said, building your own Bitcoin strategic reserve, so to speak, I think is really the true way and the true power of Bitcoin. But we're looking at a lot of these major states now start to implement or talk about some sort of Bitcoin strategic reserve. We got Texas, where I grew up, the great state of Texas. The eyes of Texas are upon us, folks. We've got Illinois, where I was born, not given a percentage for us yet, but Texas looking at 10%. And look, they're actually naming all of the sources that they would like to get, they would like to get on board. And the curious aspect of this, too, is they're looking at both reserves and pension funds to start to implement some sort of Bitcoin strategy. So it's not all about the Bitcoin strategic reserve, like I've been saying here, folks. The Bitcoin strategic reserve in the United States might pass. It might not. To be honest, it's looking like it's less likely than not here in this first year. But we're looking at the potential of Bitcoin being added to a lot of states' balance sheets. And we're looking at the potential of a sovereign wealth fund being created. And that sovereign wealth fund, after it's created, thus having Bitcoin. Because Trump, why wouldn't he add Bitcoin? He loves the tech stocks. He wants the United States to be the leader in the Bitcoin and crypto, to a lesser extent, space. So I think Trump is going to really put a priority on all of this. And that's where we're going to see a lot of things prosper here. I think it's going to be I actually kind of like this comment here from Satwise Jenks. He says polymarket odds mean nothing. The banksters are trying to manipulate buying under 100K as long as they can. OTC desk supply will soon show how finite commodity equals God candle like. Simon says, yeah. Hey, like my man Samson Mao says the God candle is coming. But that's why, I love Bitcoin Well and Bitcoin Infinite, because they're strictly non-custodial. So they're not holding any Bitcoin for you. So they're strictly going on chain and buying it for you and figuring out how to get it through those means. So that's why I've partnered with them. You don't have to worry about any liquidity issues or anything with them. But you might have to worry about it with somebody like Coinbase, where that might be a video I do later on today. I might have uncovered potentially one of the biggest attacks, I think, on the Bitcoin space. And yes, I said Samson. I corrected it for you, Satwise Jenks, but he also meant Samson. So Samson Mao, friend of the program, absolutely great. But it doesn't leave the point that we're seeing multiple states now start to bet on a Bitcoin strategic reserve, right? We got 16 states here. Matthew Siegel said 20. Now, with just these 16, we got 9.1 trill in GDP. That's big trilly style. And with that GDP, that looks at twice the GDP of the country of Japan, folks. The third largest country by GDP of any country in the world. And so I think it's interesting as we're sitting here. I'm looking at all 132 of you across Twitter and YouTube, all my friends in the chat. And I'm thinking I can't wait to meet a lot of you guys in person. So with that, we've got a lot of Bitcoin events, one of which that I'm going to be going to is BitBlock Boom. So I really think that you guys should consider coming to BitBlock Boom if you're in the United States or close to it. You could get tickets. They've got a lot of great things going on. You can get a ticket using the promo code Green Candle, and it'll give you a 10% off of all of your purchase. So if you get the big purchases, if you get the just the general admission, if you get the pro pass, if you get whatever with the dinner party and everything, you can get all that by using promo code Green Candle, get 10% off your entire order. So I really encourage you guys to come on to Dallas, come down to my home state. My sisters both live there, so you guys can maybe meet some of my family members if they decide to come and deal with my Bitcoin craziness and go through that. And with all that, folks, let's not forget that we're seeing Texas, the great state of Texas, considering putting Bitcoin on 10 or 1% of their Bitcoin or of their, reserve into Bitcoin, which is $18 billion. So that 1% is not very small here, folks. It's one of the biggest states by GDP, and I think that that's going to continue to rise up as they're embracing things like Bitcoin mining and others. So I'm going to keep this one short. I appreciate you guys coming on. Smoke the like Cheech and Chong, as my man all-nighter hider always says. Hit the subscribe button. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Join the Green Candle movement. We need to get more candles in the chat, folks. I need to start seeing people spamming the candle emojis in the chat as you guys think that I'm spewing some bullish hopium potentially. So thank you guys all for coming. Smash the like, and I'll see you guys potentially later today.